Hello everyone, this is another WikiLeaks video. This is about the latest leak that just came out yesterday. This was a CIA Red Cell leak. Now, the Red Cell is basically a project within CIA, like a think tank, set up to basically promote or provoke ways of thinking about sensitive issues, okay, basically. This one is specifically about considering the repercussions of what would happen if the world was aware that the US exports terrorism. Now this leak was actually confirmed by the CIA yesterday. This is a rare move. They don't usually actually comment on the validity of documents that have been leaked. It's not that they deny them, but it's usually like a no comment kind of situation. This has led to some speculation that this leak was actually something that they wanted to be out there, that they might have some kind of agenda for this having been leaked. And this brings on to an important point that has been pretty much ignored by a lot of people that have basically had this debate and criticised the concept of whistleblowing and what WikiLeaks does. The fact that the government has systematically in the past leaked documents on purpose when it suited their political ends. So their opposition to WikiLeaks is not some blanket opposition to the concept of leaks at all. It's just that they're not in control of those leaks. That's what they have a problem with. So that's something important to remember there. So this one is about the repercussions of what would if the world knew that the US exported terrorism. That's not to suggest that the US, the government backs terrorism exporting. It's just to say that US citizens being recruited from and operating from within the US and also being exported to operate outside of. This, of course, is something that would quite logically, quite simple logic would benefit foreign terrorist agencies, because if to recruit US citizens, first of all, they've got the US passports, they can move more freely between countries and not be as closely monitored. Also, they're not going to fit the traditional stereotypical profiles of such things as Arabic Muslim people. So just a couple of examples that were cited in this leak of the kind of export of terrorism from the US. Okay, first of all, late last year, 5 young Muslim American men travelled from North Virginia to Pakistan, allegedly to join the Pakistan Taliban and to engage in jihad. So now these 5 young Muslim Americans were actually recruited through YouTube, allegedly. And this leak recognises that fact. Later on in the leak, it says, the ubiquity of internet services around the world and the widespread use of English on popular websites such as YouTube, Facebook, MySpace and Twitter and various blogs enable radical clerics and terrorist recruiters to bypass America's physical borders and to influence US citizens. So again, that example of the Taliban using YouTube to recruit American citizens, and after they made that initial contact, they then started, exchanging secret coded emails, and they were able to then recruit, U.S. citizens through YouTube. So very close to home, the government's concerns over the way the internet is being used. Another example it cites is that some Irish Americans have long provided financial and material support for violent efforts to compel the United Kingdom to relinquish control of Northern Ireland. It talks about some of the the old history of that basically. Then it goes on to say that in the 20th century, Irish Americans provided most of the financial support sent to the IRA, Irish Republican Army. And then it says, only after repeated high-level British requests and then London's support for the American bombing of Libya in the 80s, only after that did the US government crack down on Irish American support for the IRA. So that's basically what happened there was, American governments and secret agencies basically turned a blind eye to Irish American support for the IRA, the terrorism of the England, basically, until London backed the US in its bombing of Libya. So a bit of corruption there, a bit of back scratching going on, this kind of thing. But again, just more examples. None of these things are completely secret. These are stuff that is known by people who study these kind of information. But again, it's just highlighting some of the export of US terrorism that is apparently far more common a problem these days than the US would like the world to know. So this taken from the leak itself. If the US was seen as an exporter of terrorism, foreign partners may be less willing to cooperate with the United States on extrajudicial activities, including detention, transfer and interrogation of suspects in third-party countries. As a recent victim of high-profile terrorism originating from abroad, the US government has had significant leverage to press foreign regimes to acquiesce to requests for extraditing terrorist suspects from their soil. So basically saying, well, thanks to 9/11, it's been pretty easy for us to convince other countries to give up their citizens to us for interrogation when we say that they could be terrorist suspects, this kind of thing. Carrying on from the leak. However, if the US was seen as an exporter of terrorism, foreign governments could request a reciprocal arrangement that would impact on US sovereignty. So it's basically saying there that, the US doesn't want to be held to the same accountability standards, okay? Now, this is a concern of the CIA's, obviously. Carrying on from the leak. Foreign perception of the US as an exporter of terrorism also raises difficult legal issues for the US, its foreign allies and international institutions. To date, the US is not a signatory of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and instead has pursued bilateral immunity agreements, BIAs, with other countries to ensure immunity for US nationals from ICC prosecution. The US has threatened to terminate economic aid and withdraw military assistance with countries that do not accede to BIAs. Now, these bilateral immunity agreements, they're obviously not secret. Anybody who's a knowledge of American foreign policy is a very open and public solicitation of other countries to join in with these agreements, these bilateral immunity agreements, basically which would mean that US citizens would not be held to the same account of the International Criminal Court. And this is something that has been widely opposed throughout the world. And it's a horrible, rampant and brazen example of American imperialism. So this is the point of this video, to basically highlight one very clear example of American imperialism. This is something that D. Landon Cole asked me to do in his previous response to my last video on WikiLeaks. Now, just to give the definition, imperialism is defined as the creation and maintenance of an unequal economic, cultural and territorial relationship, usually between states and often in the form of empire based on domination and subordination. So as imperialism as the creation and maintenance of an unequal economic, cultural and territorial relationship. So this is exactly what bilateral immunity agreements aim to do, and to oppose the International Criminal Court, which provides a framework for the whole world, basically, theoretically, to be culpable to the same criminal standards. Here are some quotes from prominent political figures speaking out against BIAs. Okay, from Australia, Senator Brian Greig says, Australia should continue to be a good international citizen and not go back on our good work in the development of the ICC at the request of the United States. From Austria, Benita Ferraro says, there is a fundamental need for everybody to be open to prosecution. It is important that there is no immunity. From Barbados, Michael I. King says, we will not change our principles for any amount of money. We're not going to belly up for 300 grand in training funds. From Belarus, Andrei Dabkanaya cited the regretful example of the United States arm twisting other countries to exempt Americans from possible prosecution for war crimes by the International Criminal Court. The ICC, something that the Bush administration opposed. From Brazil, Defense Minister Jose Viegas, he said he criticised the US for seeking BIAs and undermining the International Criminal Court. He said that the amount Brazil may lose in US military assistance is very small. It amounted to $472,000. From Canada, Carl Schwenger, we don't share the US concerns. Democratic, law-abiding states have nothing to fear from the ICC, which has rigorous safeguards to protect against any frivolous investigations. From Croatia, Zarko Plevnik, one can hardly expect us to extradite our people and at the same time refuse to extradite citizens of the US or any other country. From Ecuador, Diego Stacy, in reference to the $7 million in aid withheld due to their refusal to sign up for one of these BIAs, he says that money was to help Ecuadorian villages resist cocaine barons who now have a special route through Ecuador to the USA. And from Germany, Joschka Fischer said, it will certainly not be compatible with the spirit of the tribunal, which was created to bring war crime suspects to justice when national governments refuse to do so. So some comments there that directly pertain to the kind of culpability, criminal culpability, that some of these previous WikiLeaks would hold American citizens accountable for. So these bilateral immunity agreements is something that the US has brazenly tried to get other countries to sign up and bribed them to sign up to these things, no less, in order to make US citizens not accountable in the same way for such things as war crimes. So I'll put a link in the low bar as well to the full table of comments from from high-ranking officials speaking out against these BIAs, this blatant example of American imperialism. And might notice that the countries that I've read to you from have all been near the beginning of the alphabet. There's so many, I only had to look at the first couple of pages to get some quotes that are interesting there. Now, just to add on as well, this also comes on the back of Julian Assange having been briefly accused of rape by 2 different people. The charges dropped within 6 hours. Julian Assange was very careful not to directly implicate the Pentagon in this. This clip taken from an interview with Al Jazeera.
It is clearly a smear campaign, and we can see that the material the allegation was withdrawn and 6 hours later. The only question is who was involved. But without direct evidence, I mean, I would not be willing to make a direct allegation.
Okay, so aside from that, the official statement from Pentagon Press Secretary Jeff Morrell said that Assange's charges that apparently directly implicated the Pentagon were absurd. Really? Really? You think it's absolutely absurd that the Pentagon or a government could be in any way linked to these charges? Not that he did directly link you, but you think it's absurd, like completely unreasonable, completely impossible. Absurd. Really? Well, let's just have a look at this. Let's have a look, first of all, at something that you said in a press conference last week.
If doing the right thing is not good enough for them, then we will figure out what other alternatives we have to compel them to do the right thing. Let me leave it at that.
Of course, when you combine that with the public knowledge that the CIA uses the spread of disinformation to fight its opponents, its threats. Now, this is something that is so common knowledge that it's actually on the CIA website, on the children's page, when they have nice little pictures of spies and games to play. One of the things that they tell the kids that the CIA does is to spread disinformation. So we know you do this. We know you do this. We also know that one of the quite well-established modes that the CIA and other secret organizations use to discredit their opponents is what is known as a honeypot or honey trap. This is specifically where they will get their targets involved in a sexual liaison in order to either extract information or manipulate them in some way. This also ties in interestingly with a quote from the lawyer that was representing both these women that briefly accused Assange, Klaus Borgstrom, who dismissed any foreign involvement in their complaints. Now, this is what his statement was. He says, "There is not an ounce of truth in all of this about the Pentagon or the CIA or smear campaigns, nothing like it." Okay, first of all, Assange never stated in his press releases that the CIA might be involved, okay? He did say that he'd been warned by Australian intelligence that there might be some kind of smear campaign, but he was very careful not to directly implicate the Pentagon, certainly didn't mention the CIA. And again, remembering that in 2008, WikiLeaks did actually get hold of another CIA Red Cell leak, which explicitly showed that one of their objectives was going to be to discredit WikiLeaks, to discredit the people working for WikiLeaks in order to weaken its position. In fact, it gets even juicier that recently Julian Assange has revealed that the first woman accuser and prime mover in this rape accusation had worked for the Swedish embassy in Washington, D.C. and has been expelled from Cuba for anti-Cuban government activity. Links for all this in the low bar. So all this adds up to a pretty solid case for a Pentagon involvement of trying to smear WikiLeaks, the WikiLeaks founder. Really dirty tactics. So again, no respect deserved for the US government at all. And to see people sticking up for them and making their arguments for them when they really don't deserve it, and the amount of hypocrisy and corruption going on there, I don't think they deserve the backing. But the main point of this video, again, American imperialism, and I hope that that has illustrated my points there about that. Another very interesting leak, another very robust claim for how important WikiLeaks is to us in the dissemination of information and in journalism as we move into an age where the mainstream media is pretty much castrated in its capacity as people's representative to hold governments account. So more power to WikiLeaks, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.